Mr. Vandem, if you would, please go ahead and introduce yourself. Give us a little bit about your background and specifically tell us about Victims of Circumstance.
Okay. Actually, the documentary is entitled Victims of Misfortune.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah, and the tagline is Changing the Second Order. Basically depicting, let me go a little bit into my history first. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I attended college at North Carolina Central University. It was at North Carolina Central University that I basically made a bad decision, caught a criminal record, and I did about 40 years in prison. I mean, not 40 years, oh my God. I did about 40 months in prison. And when I got out of prison, I basically learned the trade. I went to school. I went to truck driving school, acquired my CDLs, worked for a couple of years, saved my money, and then I eventually started my own business, and I've been working for myself ever since. And the thing with the Victims of Misfortune, what we're trying to point out is we're coming from it from a different perspective. This is not a documentary of America's war on drugs. I have the belief that if you have a moral ground to stand on, please stand on it. One of the greatest stories that you can, or one of the greatest stories that's ever been passed down was the story of Jesus, and how, if you look at Jesus, he was a revolutionary. And, before someone was stoned, the first thing, and I'm not a Christian, I'm just telling the story. And before someone was stoned, Jesus would, say, okay, he without sin cast the first stone. And basically he was saying, if you have a more, some of you have done things in your life that you're not proud of. And, before you cast someone else away, you need to take a look within yourself. So we want to build it off of that. So the whole documentary, we kind of went back a little further than that African child of slavery. And, we did probably, I'd say maybe about 6 or 7 years of thorough research, of intense reading, intense investigation. And I come trying to piece together the information, so I won't give too much of the documentary away. But there's a part of American history that we don't discuss. And when you discuss crime in America, we didn't start from African child of slavery. We started from the British colonies. And I say, okay, well, where did these people come from? How did Great Britain populate America? And when you look at how they populated America, you will uncover mass incarceration. So this system that is now used to exploit us, that some people call the new Jim Crow, itself isn't new, because Jim Crow itself wasn't new. And it was 150 years in American history where Europeans enslaved Europeans. So they had 150 years to practice what they was going to do against us. And basically what this is if you there's an excellent book on it by Peter Wilson Colehelm entitled Immigrants and Change. And basically it's about the transportation of convicts from Great Britain to the American colonies. And it shows in this book how the laws in Great Britain, because at the time Great Britain was going through famine, it was going through plagues, natural disasters, so you had an abundance of poor people. And you have to understand crime and poverty go hand in hand. So the large majority of poor whites that were in Great Britain were basically given 3 options. And the 3 options that they were given were death, the scientists would be able to use them as experiments, or transportation to the American colonies. And that's where our documentary starts from. So when you research that, you'll find out how laws in Great Britain were changed in order to target the poor population, because the aristocrats didn't want these people around. They felt like, okay, we need to get these beggars and these homeless people and these people of misfortune, we need to get them up out of here. So now when we discuss crime in America, I really don't like to pinpoint crime on Africans in America, because we're not the first or the original criminals. and we didn't set forth manifest destiny or white divine right in America. Who set that off? That was Christopher Columbus. So when we sit back and we look at, and I got a video, one of the first videos we put up is to take action, support the, wake up, take action, support the film video. And I wrote that while I was incarcerated. And one of the questions that I posed, and if you ever get a chance to go to our website, you can see it. One of the questions that I posed was, who is the real criminal? So you can't take a crime, you can't take something and you criminalize it. And when you talk about the war on drugs in America, in actuality, America had a drug problem before the Civil War in America. So, when you do that research, you say, okay, wait a minute. They had a time in America, this was prior to the prohibition of alcohol and prior to the American drug war. You actually had a time in America where things were sold and it was marketed that these illegal drugs were actually in the product. So when you look at soda pop with Coca-Cola, when you look at the different the cough syrups and the ailment, the different things that was marketed, they made sure that they had cocaine on the front of it, or that it included cocaine in the marketing aspect, and at the same time, they also made sure that opium was mentioned in the marketing materials to promote these products. So after they got America hooked on drugs, then they turn around and say, okay, now we're going to criminalize it. So the very first victims in America that faced criminalization behind the use of quote-unquote illegal drugs were Asians. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of people don't even know that. In the state of California, Asians were working for less. So they put Asians in competitions with white men for jobs. So in order to, to basically get rid of some of my competition, we're going to criminalize their behavior. So all of this is about criminalizing behavior. It's all about studying people, realizing what it is that you can criminalize them in order to target a certain group. So if you ever know anything about cooking, if you take eggs and you mix it with cake mix and you put vegetable oil in it and milk and whatever the ingredients to go to make a cake, and you put that in the oven, you're not going to open the oven 30 minutes later and see a puppy. You're going to see a cake. And you're going to see that cake because you engineered, you put these things together in order to produce a final product. And in America, that's one of the things that we're going through now. Our government has been putting things together to engineer criminal activity, because you have to understand one thing that really kind of irritates me is the fact that you have these people that say, well, you got to rehabilitate these people, or these people are not coming home are not being rehabilitated, or this person can't be rehabilitated. But it doesn't matter how much time you spend in prison or how much rehabilitation that you're going through. If you come back out into society itself hasn't been rehabilitated. I live in the South. Everywhere I go down here, now these things are based on my documentary is based on history. It's based on historical facts. It's not just solely based on opinion. So if you look at President Nixon, who passed the war on drugs during the 70s, he said, well, America's number one problem is America's war on drugs. Okay, we know that the war on drugs is a failed policy. And we know that President Nixon himself was a criminal. See, that's the thing that people are not paying attention to. We want to look at the person who are victims of these institutions and say, okay, you're the criminal, while in the same breath, they're committing criminal acts, and they are able to walk free, scot-free, with no punishment, no regret. And we having this fight that we having as far as racial justice in America and human rights in America, we cannot go to our oppressor and say, give me regrets on your actions that you committed against me, because they're not going to do that. They don't have the integrity. They don't have the honor in saying, okay, you know what, we were wrong, and this whole war on drugs was wrong. So when Nixon was found, when Nixon cabinet was being investigated over the Watergate scandal, see, these things that people don't talk about. They come out when they talk about mass incarceration. They talk about Nixon and the war on drugs, but they never say that Nixon himself was a criminal. His whole cabinet went to prison or pled guilty to a felony. Okay? But what happened when it was Nixon's turn to face the criminal charges? He resigned from the presidency, and then he turned around and got President Ford, who was his vice president, to come into office, and the first thing Ford did when he got into office was what? Gave Nixon a pardon. Okay? Same thing with Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter, yeah, a lot of people love these presidents, but you got to understand what message is America sending. Jimmy Carter gave a pardon to Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was the president of the Confederate government in the United States. Okay, now we can't get pardons, but you give them to these people who committed violent acts, who've killed thousands of people, or based upon their commands, killed thousands of people. Now we look at Bill Clinton and his presidency. Okay, black people love Bill Clinton because he was on the late night show playing the saxophone, but he was one of the worst public policy passers in the history of America. He passed the crime bill that's saying 3 strikes and you out. He did away with Pell Grant, so you can't get education. You can't be educated while you're in prison. And he did all of this tough war on drugs, this tough on crime, and at the same time, his half-brother pled guilty to trafficking in drugs for distributing drugs, and he received a pardon. You see what I'm saying? These things, this is what we're talking when we're saying criminal responsibility. You want me to be responsible in a society where all our actions are engineered. People are who they are based upon their access to resources. And when I say access to resources, I mean access to water, access to food, access to houses. You know what I'm saying? So, lack of access to these things will produce a certain product. So to build on what Brother Ivan was talking about, when they removed the industries out of the inner city, all of this was planned. It was engineered. Because after the Civil Rights Movement, they said, okay, we want y'all up out of here. It's all about extracting free labor. That's what it's about. So now, actually, they just did a I-team investigation locally here in North Carolina because you had companies that would participate in their fundraisers in prison. So you got Papa John's and Charlie C's and, grocery store chains that are doing fundraisers, and then they took a black woman, put her in front of the news as a spokesperson for the Department of Correction, and she basically was saying, this is, the inmate, and I hate using the word inmates, but this is kind of what she said. This is the inmates' way of showing that they have been rehabilitated. And my question is, how are they showing that they're being rehabilitated, by raising money for a corporation, and that people don't understand who are the CEOs in this corporation? We have to dig more into the political side of things. We can sit around all day long and talk about we shall overcome, but we got to actually take steps to ensure that, okay, look, I'm not begging a thief for nothing that's mine. My people aren't from America. My family was here, but they was here because they was kidnapped. It was a crime that was committed. And Britain and America never faced up to or never took responsibility of their crimes to humanity that nobody can take away. I don't care if you get in an argument in the club and you kill somebody. I do care. I ain't going to say I don't care, but I do care. But the statement I'm trying to make, you give one man 3 life sentences for one crime, but yet you kill thousands of people every day, and we as Americans are just as guilty because they're doing it with our taxpayers' dollars. We didn't push the button, we didn't pull the trigger, but they did it with our money. And my whole thing is who you give your money to is who you give your power. So if we and this is one of the reasons why I say this is because I read an article about Target, the national retailer. So these things are out there, and it's fact coming from my end. And Target was known as a felony-friendly corporation, a multicultural company as far as their employees are concerned. And I don't shop at Target. And the reason why I don't shop at Target because Target denied me employment because I have a felony on my record. So if I can't work for you, I'm not going to spend my money with you, and that's something that we have to look at when we talking about national talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was a very, very important point you just made. People have to keep in mind that when you have loved ones and family who are incarcerated with felonies, when we get back out to society, it's so many businesses that won't employ us. There are also businesses out there that we're investing in and spending money with that are investing in the private prison industry itself. So these are things that we have to become more aware of, because the economics of prison now, that's what it's all about. It's about getting bodies inside of prison and justify these incredible prison budgets, and then at the same time they're taking these same people and put them in the work for free labor. So if you would, Brother Vaughn, speak to the overall economics of the prison system as a whole, and just kind of give us some insight on, the raw numbers and just, how many billions of dollars are actually changing hands here.
Okay, that's a good point to bring up. In the state of North Carolina, it used to be a time where if you was incarcerated, you can your family members can actually send you shoes or bring you shoes in, and you can wear them. Well, they did away with that a couple of years ago, to where now Reebok has a contract with the state. Okay, which means that if your child want a shoe, he got to get it from Reebok. Okay, but if your child come home from prison, they cannot Reebok will not employ them. Same way with Coca-Cola. Now, the overall aspect of this is the money that we spend, over $70 billion annually, okay, on incarceration. That's not including the drug seizures, the money that's cooped. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It doesn't include the money that is actually extracted from these drug busts. So now, basically, what America has done was they created a system to where the local law enforcement, sheriffs, state troopers, local police departments, they now are pickup kids, basically, on the highways. So what are they doing? They're pulling people over. They not only are they pulling people over for no reason, but then they are violating people's Fourth Amendment rights. And we have to look at the Constitution, what President Obama is signing in office. And we have to look at why would we vote Democrat? Why would we vote Republican? Both of these parties have been forerunners in the war on crime. They have been the forerunners of mass incarceration. And one thing that, if you ever get the book Immigrants in Chains, and you understand when the Europeans enslaved their own in America and brought them over here on the bottom of slave holes, some people may say, well, my uncle, my great-great-grandfather was an indentured servant, and my great-great-grandmother might have came over as an apprentice. Well, if you look at the shipping laws, once they got on the ship, there were no apprentices. Everybody was a convicted felon in the eyes of the slave trader. Okay? And if you ever look at the etymology of the word kidnap was created because they were snatching European children off the street, putting them on the bottom of slave ships and bringing them over here and forcing them into servitude. So they in servitude for 7 or 14 years. But one thing that they did to them that they didn't do to, or that they didn't give to the Africans that was chattel property at that time, was they gave them a second chance. That's how America was known as the second chance. And actually, we're going to release an article on my website that's basically, it's entitled America, a Race of Convicts. And it's not a title that I created. It's what America was known as during this time. So when we look at the movies, and that's one thing by me being a filmmaker in the media department, you have to look at the propaganda that's being put out there. And there are millions upon millions of dollars being spent in just crime-related TV shows. Why are they crime-related TV shows? Because they want you to be okay with us in this system of mass incarceration. So what do? They show you all of these things, and they program you all of these bad things that people have done. And some of that content, some of the footage is a stretch over the last 50 or 60 years. You understand what I'm saying? So they show these things to you to scare you, and they're going for whatever crime deal they want you to go for. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people to say, okay, do away with all the prisons, because I do think that if you violate the law, you should do your time, if you indeed violate the law. But in America, you have two different sets of laws. You have laws for the wealthy, you have laws for the poor. And when you start digging into these laws as far as the federal gun law, Did you know the federal gun law forbids anyone that's been convicted of a felony to possess a firearm? Okay? What does that do? That leaves you defenseless, number one. And number two, are there any amendments to that law? Of course. What are the amendments to that law? If I was a convicted felon from Mexico, from Austria, from France, and they know I killed somebody over there, and I come into America, I have the ability to purchase and possess a firearm because my felony wasn't committed in America. That's number one. And number two, you have another part to the law which talks about if your felony conviction is related to a business trade or a business crime. Okay, so if I'm on Wall Street and I embezzle or I do a pyramid scheme and I beat people out of $70 million and they give me 7 years in prison, once I get out of prison, guess what? I got a right to possess a firearm. So what does that do? No poor people are going to be on Wall Street in order to create these, in order to commit a Wall Street crime. So you're not even going to fall into that bracket. That's that loophole for the 1%. Even if they commit a crime while they still filthy rich, they still are able to carry a firearm. And one thing we have to look at is after European slaves did their 7 or 14 years in indentured servitude, each of them received 40 acres. They received a mule. They received a calf. They received a firearm. It's by the law of your creator, you are able to defend yourself. You should be able to defend yourself. So when they turn around and they say, okay, we're going to pass this law where no convicted felon, and they base the law based on your income, because like I said, you're not doing a business trade practice crime. That's the only crime you can do is possess a firearm. The only way you can commit that crime is if you within that 1% that is controlling everything. So when we sit back and we look at what does that do for the person in our community. You put us in poor community. You put us back in poor communities where we got poor education because we have poor teachers. So you're making just enough money to continue to live in a poor community. It's all about the suppression of the ambition of the poor. It has nothing to do with right and wrong, because if it had anything to do with right and wrong, then we'll talk about how we doing drones attacks and things. You understand? And we'll talk about this fake humanitarian lie that they get us to believe about why they're going to Africa. You know, and you just take the blacks out the way for a minute. Okay, you got starving white people in West Virginia. You got starving white people in North Carolina, in Alabama, living in the trailer park, can't eat. You know, don't know where their next meal gonna come from, and you won't feed them, but you're gonna go to Africa and do some humanitarian for us, and we know you don't like us. You understand where I'm coming from? So we have.
Yeah, I do.
As a side, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just was saying, you know, just like you said, poverty is everywhere. The only thing they'll put in our community is drugs, like you talked about with Bill Clinton. They went inside the communities with the after-school programs. I remember when I was a kid, you could go to the community center over the summer and get a lunch. They had the after-school lunch program because people didn't have the resources in the community to feed all the kids. So you had all these different government funds. But like you said, Bill Clinton came in. He took away the Pell Grants. You know, he made it against the law to be hired in so many different jobs on the federal level, which also bled down to the state level. He also passed the Prison Litigation Reform Act, which made it basically impossible for people incarcerated to even file claims under the Civil Rights Act. And he also came with the Anti-Terrorism Effective Death Penalty Act, and that was a move that allowed the government to really take away the writ of habeas corpus from people who were wrongfully convicted inside states to even get their cases to federal court. We're going to get Mr. Curry to come on in just a second. He's going to speak specifically about the Prison Litigation Reform Act, the Anti-Terrorism Effective Death Penalty. Even in Alabama, they just passed the Alabama Prison Litigation Reform Act. So now the states are starting to take the same role. So with mass incarceration, overcrowdedness, underfunding, the states are still finding new ways to take away rights from people who are incarcerated to prevent anyone from getting outside of this system that we see after listening to Ivan, listening to you. We see that this is a trap that's been set up. Right now we have a caller who wants to get on. Go ahead and introduce the caller, Melvin Ray.
Professor Law.
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks for joining us here on the Movement Roundtable. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, brother, I was listening, and I love to listen and learn, you know, because listening earns me something. And I was listening to the brother, and I'm understanding the victimization of the black man as time has gone on. But what I also understand is the black man has become a victim in his own mind. The laws that we talk about that are being enacted against us, that does not stop us from making conscious decisions. So I want to know what the speaker has to say about brothers that make conscious decisions to also continue to help these acts be progressed. When you talk about crack cocaine and the dilemmas and things that brothers have faced in neighborhoods that they were raised in, not that they were victimized, it's just heredity. It's just, hey, this is my culture. I was born here. I was raised here. So I have to do what it takes to survive. Once brothers understand that, and they understand that the police are trying to put them in a position to incarcerate them for not short time, but long time, to get them out of the neighborhoods. Talk about the mentality of black men that don't evade these understandings, that don't evade, you know, I got the knowledge that I'm a victim, but I still put myself in the victim mentality. I just wanted to hear the speaker talk about that because that's what I feel in 2014 is the black man's problem.
Okay, we're going to let the speaker speak to that. It was interesting. We had a post about that today. Just what you said, you know, and then we heard Ivan talk about the education gap. Okay, we know we're uneducated. We know that we're not getting the education we need with the books that we're being fed. So, you know, where is this education going to come from? So I'm going to go ahead and let Brother Vaughn go ahead and speak to that, if you would, let Brother Vaughn answer the question. And if there's anyone else who want to comment, you want to call and you want to make suggestions, please press 1. You know, we want to hear from the callers out there, hear what your perspectives are. If you got more questions, we're here for that too. So go ahead, Brother Vaughn.
Okay. Well, basically, subconsciously, they have been defeated. In America, they have basically have us in a position where they convince a lion that the lion is now a rabbit. You follow where I'm coming from? They have convinced us it's not just education. Education is just a small part of it. When you have and actually in you know, when you have all of the institutions that are put together, you have the fact that the education they're lacking, they have poor education or no education. Then on top of that, the music that they're listening to that's also attacking their subconscious. Then the movies that they're being shown, like I just told you, history on white servitude, but you never seen a movie on white servitude. Yeah, you got The Patriot, and they got what's the other one? Both of them starred Mel Gibson, The Patriot and Braveheart. Okay, both of them talked about the history that I just told you about, but they didn't tell you that in that sense. Okay. So these people, our people are being programmed and attacked subconsciously. Now, while they're being attacked by all of this subconsciously, not being able to be employable, and they look at the TV and everything they see is what? It's bling ding. We got a brand new Mercedes-Benz. We got a brand new iPhone. So it creates, subconsciously, it creates a desire to want and need and obtain these things that are being flashed in front of your face. And for the conscious brothers, and one thing I'm going to tell you, this is just my experience when I was in prison, you know, I took it upon myself. You know, we got to get to the point where I was watching this one video with Dr. Claude, and he was talking about struggle is the highest form of education. And right now we're going through a struggle. And the education that you obtain through struggle is better than any education you can get from any university. So with our struggle, the people have to see that there is a way out. Like one of the reasons why I started my own company, because I was working at a job where, you know, there was it was brought up by another company. When a new company came in, the first thing they said, anybody with a criminal record, you fired. All of you have to go. You laid off. No more job for y'all. So I said, okay, I cannot let anyone control my economic freedom. I mean, my economic independence. So I have to make sure that I'm gonna take care of myself. And if you're tired of companies telling or running your criminal background, then we have to educate people on being entrepreneurs. This is a capitalist society. In order for us to get ahead, that's what we're going to have to do. I did an interview with Terry McMillan, the author with How Stella Got a Groove Back and Waiting to Excel. And
yeah, man, come on. I'm coming on.
And we was doing the interview. She basically, you know, it was her and Omar Tyree. And Omar Tyree had asked her, you know, it was like, well, you know, when you wrote Waiting to Excel, men was upset that you wrote that book. And she kept it real. She was like, well, I didn't write the book for you. And if you were so upset, write your own book. Okay? And that's what we have to do as men. We got to say, you know what, you know, where we spend our money. Where do majority of the black people spend their money? They are being targeted by this system. We spend our money with the very same people that are creating a system for us to be economically enslaved. So we have to all wake up. It does us no good to say, okay, you know, I understand that the CEO of Papa John's is invested in for-profit prison, but yet you still buy pizza from Papa John's. Then that means that Papa John's is investing in prisons with your money. So who you give your money to is who you give your power, and we got to wake these young brothers up, and we got to wake our people up to say, okay, if your money is involved in prison, if you're selling your poisons in prison, that's what it is. That's a whole nother documentary, but you sell your poisons in prison. You mean to think that I can buy Coke while I'm locked up in prison, but I can't work for Coca-Cola when I get out of prison because I've been in prison? You know, it's hypocritical. And what we want to do is we want to show people, okay, don't be a victim. Like I told you, I was in the Marine Corps. I don't believe in nobody giving me anything. I'm not going to beg a thief for what's mine, okay? But at the same time, I recognize what the game is, and that's what we have to do. We have to be more cautious of where we spend our money, because where we spend our money is who we give our power.